Alice Springs with having appointments made and people rescheduling all the time, and I had planned on doing all these interviews and then that didn't really work out. I only ended up doing 5 over the whole month just because of the rescheduling and the very laid back kind of atmosphere here. So, and that's generally the things that will happen in a small organisation. I think you have to give some leeway for things like that and really adjust your expectations. So my work at Hidden Valley was slow and frustrating. I think I established some sort of rapport and went along to another youth night and rode my bike in there at night, which was not a good idea. All these dogs met me at the gate and chased me out of the place, and I had to get someone to stop on the side of the road in a minibus and take me in.
I see your face when I'm staring out the window, beaming down in the moonlight. Winter is colder without you by my side.
I think I could have managed there, maybe not for 3 months. It's pretty isolating and still rough out there really. But I did go into the artist studio in Papunya Chula, and there were old ladies sitting down and doing their dot paintings, and they were one of the ladies was sitting down with another lady who was an interpreter, and she was just telling her story as a little video side project. So it's really great to see that, and that was a non-profit organisation, and it's really good to see that these sorts of things can run even in a really remote community. So it was good to see Papunya, Hermannsburg, and that was a pretty eye-opening time. There was a lot of petrol sniffing going on in Hermannsburg, and we actually went out to see one of the boys who had been petrol sniffing and trying to encourage him into employment. There's a great organisation called Chiwampa, which encourages young men and skills them up in a lot of the trades and computers and gardening and all that sort of thing.
Alright, Chiwampa, you might be working in the garden? You want to work in the garden?
That was the worst town camp or town that I've been to so far. There were children running around naked and muddy and stepping on glass and looking through piles of rubbish for things to eat, and people, and I'm not exaggerating, were sitting down and gambling $50 at a time and drinking, even though these communities, these town camps have a no grub policy. And it just confirmed for me some of the things that the media and that tend to be right-wing people really pick up on. So there is that sort of thing happening, and we can't, I find that with really left-wing progressive movements that say that we shouldn't discriminate and everything, when you look at it, the statistics are not in favour of Indigenous people, and we can't deny this, and there's a real divide between people here who are trying to be politically correct and people who are just looking at the figures. I'm in the middle of it, and it's a little bit of a dilemma for me because I don't want to be seen as a racist person and I don't want to have these racist beliefs, but I still find that they are quite hard to shake when you do see things that confirm what is happening around you. They were, on the other hand, very welcoming, and they invited me to sit down with them and sit in the river and play cards, and they told me to bring icy poles and lollies and things for the kids, and I think they do get sick of tourists just coming in and expecting to get some sort of amazing cultural experience when they're not really worthy of that, and it almost makes these people in town camps and that just seem like, you know, pawns, or it can make them just seem like they are artifacts to view in a museum or animals to view in a zoo. Who rolled in a car a while ago and he lost the feeling in both legs, and he told me to come and sit down with him, and he was sort of sitting among all these piles of rubbish and really dirty blankets and things, really arthritic fingers, and he sat there and he told me, you know, all about his family and all about where he came from and what happened to him in the accident, and he did just want a really good chat. And then I did have another lady come up, and at first I thought that she wanted to sell me something, like her paintings, but then she really just wanted to use her paintings to help illustrate her story and her country and her family. And if you ask an Aboriginal person about their family, then they can talk for hours and hours, because in her words, they're a big mob and there's lots of them. It's just a completely different culture, and I do really struggle to see how the two cultures can not assimilate but integrate and learn from each other when it's really hard to get rid of these racist preconceptions that we have, even that social workers have. In some ways the intervention has been a positive thing, because I do now see that there is a need for controlling the systems that we Westerners have put in place, and temptations like alcohol and money and gambling, which never existed before white people first settled in Australia. And so it is our responsibility to also apply some sort of system which can help people deal with this. So income management in some ways I think is good, but I think it should happen for everybody. And I don't think that would be such a bad thing. I think I'd be fine with having my income controlled in that way, saying that I can only spend it at a good variety of stalls. It would have to be, I mean, even the local organic store here has basics cards eligibility. So whilst it used to be just for Coles and Woolworths and creating a huge monopoly through income management of the intervention policies, it is being expanded, and it could actually be a non-monetary system which would possibly work. One of the problems that we seem to not be able to overcome in our preconceptions and trying to solve, close the gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians is this psychological reaction that we have of disgust. And disgust is an evolutionary mechanism where if we see something disgusting, we want to avoid it for our own self-preservation. And so when you're going into communities like the town camps that I visited, you do feel like you're going to be, like things are unclean and that you might get sick from it. And so our immediate reaction is to stand back and self-preserve our own safety and hygiene. And so this survival mechanism of disgust is something that's really hard to overcome. And once we overcome that mechanism of disgust, I think that we can make some sort of progress. I went to a seminar on child protection workers, and it was asking whether child protection workers are doing the dirty work, because there are all of those connotations of a child protection worker as someone who removes children, especially in Indigenous contexts, as resonating with the stolen generation. And in some ways, from my conversations with social workers, it does seem to be that there are these conceptions, how can you do that job? Not in a congratulations, good on you for putting yourself out and doing such a difficult job, but more just in how would you bear to break up families like that? And in the end, I do see that some families do need a lot of attention. I don't necessarily agree with removing the child for a long period of time. I think, even a couple of hours a day or something like that, but also training or educating the whole family in context of how to better look after their children. It just makes sense. You treat problems at the source. At a youth worker's house, because you immediately get into a social circle that is focused around social justice and who are fairly left-wing and progressive, and who tend to kind of make you think about the big picture, and I still get sucked in by the amazing beauty of the place, with the really red rocks which are just like dotted like marbles all around the landscape.
And